Hello and welcome to The Big Fight. Today we're going to take a look at an existentialist question, which is probably really important increasingly in our society now. What really constitutes success? We're going to look at the subject especially for women, but maybe we'll get men into it also, because a lot of debate has been taking place in the last few weeks, months and years. Is a successful woman somebody who's working, getting a fat paycheck? Is that what constitutes success? Is a homemaker more successful? Should there be any normative judgment between one or the other? Or should it largely be a matter of choice? Those are just some of the themes that we're going to take a close look at, and we have a power-packed panel to take us through all nuances of this particular question. And we're not just doing this because of all the advertisements that we've been seeing in recent times. It's a slightly broader question than that. So Vinita Bali joining us from Chennai. It's always an honor to have you with us, ma'am. Thanks a lot. You've, of course, been one of the highest profile corporate executives we've had here, CEO Britannia and such, and so on and so forth. Amira Sonia, who was country executive and chairperson, Royal Bank of Scotland, also a politician, Aam Aadmi Party and all of that. Meera, thank you so much for being with us. Amish Tripathi also joining us from Mumbai, author of the Shiva trilogy, which is of course one of the top selling, all those three books actually among the top selling that we've had here in India. Here with us in our studio, Rahul Ishwar, who's an author and activist, also spokesperson of Sabarimala Trust. So great to have you with us. Sohail Seth, well, needs no further introduction than to say that he's Sohail Seth. So I will leave it there just at the moment. Swaroop Sarkar, who's a founder of the Save the Family Foundation, and I'm going to start off by asking what exactly this foundation does at some point. It sounds rather alarming. Save the Family Foundation. Ranjana Kumari, great to have you with us as well, and Sanjana Seth, who's a program coordinator, International AIDS Vaccine Initiative, but somebody who's been juggling a lot of those choices in her personal life over the last so many years, and that's some of what we're going to be getting from you as well. Vinita Bali, why don't I start off with you first though. What do you think in the present era should constitute success for a woman, and is it in any way different than it is for a man, and in some way more unfair?
You know, to my mind, actually it's quite simple. Success is excelling in whatever you've chosen to do. So if you're an artist, you must be an excellent artist. If you are a business person, you contribute extraordinarily there. You know, if you choose to be a homemaker, you do that well. So I think we don't need to sort of make a big deal about it. I think it's really boils down to doing what you do and doing it really well.
So let me just take that thought forward. Many women say that, look, it's more unfair for us because we could be the CEO of Britannia or whatever it is, but at the end of the day, someone's always going to be questioning whether the food is well made at home, and whether the kids are being looked after and dropped to school, and therefore there's double pressure on women. Would you agree with that part of it? I think society has has put a lot of multi-dimensional demands on women. So when we look at women, we expect them to excel in work, if they're working, to excel at home, to basically excel all round. And I think the question we have to ask ourselves is that a fair expectation? Why isn't that same expectation, extendable to, to a man? Because, they have families too. They have their professions as well. So I think part of it is a debate that we ourselves are fueling, Vikram. Okay. We need to recognize that there are many roles that all of us play. And, how we play those roles is what should determine success, irrespective of my gender. Okay. So, Amish Tripathi, is that not something that happens? Is there in some way that women are looked at differently in this? Taking up from what Vinita Bali just said, you could be a really successful author, you could be the most successful author in India, but at the end of the day, if you're not managing your family life effectively, would somebody not come and ask you questions that what are you doing? Why aren't you home? Why aren't you, attending the appropriate PTA meetings or anniversaries or birthdays?
Look, frankly, I don't see why I should care a damn about what the society thinks. I think what is important for a unit, a family unit, both the husband and the wife, is to look out for each other. But, it's of course fair to expect a woman to be a good wife, but at the same time, it should be fair for the good wife to expect to have a good husband. And by definition, a good husband should be one who is as committed to the dreams of his wife as he is to his own dreams. And that's what will lead to a better marriage. And if that means the husband has to pull his weight at home, then he should pull his weight at home.
Amish, this is theoretical. Does any of this happen in practice?
Sadly, no. I think there are families where men have been able to make the transition. But in India, what has happened is many women have moved further down the road of emancipation than their husbands have. And yes, that is a fact. We are a society in transition. Hopefully, we will transition a little more quickly. But at this point in time, yes, there is a lot more pressure on women than on their men. And that's not fair. That's not fair.
Okay. More pressure. Like first of all, what does Save the Family Foundation actually stand for? You think that men are actually treated worse than women?
If you see the suicide statistics, 64,000 men is suiciding every year versus 32,000 women.
But in the men's case, it's not necessarily because of their wives or their in-laws. In the other case,
whatever may be. Just a minute. By showing the suicide statistics of the woman, you had made 6-7 unfair law, which is not followed all over the world. Our aim, the word men, woman should be replaced by the person. Husband, wife should be replaced by the spouse. That is our dream, and for that we work to the people as well as to the government and even to request.
So just the point that you're talking, are women treated more unfairly than men?
See, as the time goes, as you asked, what is success? In our all programs, even in our corporate world also, success we define, you should lead a distressful life. And for that, how to achieve it? As I explained to various people when an abused person come to us, your stress is equal to uncertainty multiplied by importance. So whatever you are doing, either uncertainty you have to make zero, or importance you have to make zero. Then only you will be having this.
If I understand you correctly, you're saying that men are facing so much more stress. Actually,
yes, because if you see the working hours, the unpaid work done by the men, like driver, electrician, coolie, market drivers, these are not counted. And if you see the working hours of the men, all over international world, 40 to 45 hours is the international standard. In India, men are working around 65 to 70 hours. And that is the biggest problem of the suicide of the men.
Amira Sonia, the point being made out here is that, look, women keep saying that, yeah, we have to balance so many things. What about the men? They have to do it too. They have to first go in and work really long hours, and then doing a lot of other things like acting as chauffeurs and, gardeners and handymen, things like that.
So Vikram, I don't think it's a man versus woman thing, but I would be quite surprised if there was any woman in the country who says that she does not have lots of hours of unpaid work. So every woman does plenty of unpaid work, mostly in the house, but also in the office. So, these are spurious arguments. I think the real issue is, how are we looking at issues of success? How are we looking at issues of home? How are we looking at this relationship? And I think the thing that we really need to focus on is that it is becoming a more equal world. If you want to have a happy home, the man should do as much at home as a woman does, even though we accept that the woman is the primary caregiver. I don't think it's a competition of who is more stressed or who is more successful.
I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm asking you that if one partner, for example, is working a 10-hour or a 12-hour day, and the other partner is working a 6-hour day or a 7-hour day, should the partner working fewer hours therefore take a greater burden at home, whether it's the male or the female?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
Okay, fine. So we're in agreement on that one point. So Sohail Seth, who's itching to jump in here and smash just whatever arguments have been made so far.
No, I think the fault lies with the television anchor in this case.
I knew it. Why am I not surprised?
To make this whole debate into success. No, success is a very silly notion to judge humanity by.
Why?
I think it's the silliest notion because, for people, monetary wealth is success. For other people, achievement of a different kind is success. I think the argument should be based on two premises. Number one, do we afford the dignity that we should afford to both men and women? Number two, do we respect whatever they do, no matter under what circumstances? That is not happening in India. And there is a certain level of hypocrisy. There are three people at fault. Number one, television anchors. Number two, feminists and all these, activists
I'm
who I call the
television anchors.
anyway. Well, you'll always phrase the debate for TRPs
Why? I'm just asking
and
a simple
question.
Hang on, I'm just asking a simple question. What defines success?
No.
How could it be more loosely
So let me
defined
tell you.
than that?
Let me tell you what
I'm
Ratan
not prescribing
Tata.
what
Ratan Tata said.
I'm not prescribing what success is. I'm asking you what success is. And if you can't
chasing
phrase it correctly,
success,
that's
No,
your
one
fault
minute,
or
all
the TV
that.
anchors.
Chasing
what-
success, he can say all that.
No, I
Because
can
himself
quite
is
speak on my
one
own.
of the
Thanks,
victims
Ranjana. Let
of
me finish.
chasing success.
So let me tell you, Ratan Tata defined success in an interview to The Economist saying, it's a good night's sleep.
Right.
It varies from people to people. The moot argument is that does Indian society respect all hues of professional / home work, or do we not? Do we expect the women to follow stereotypes? The answer is yes. Will that change? With education and evolution, it will.
Okay, fair enough. But I'm asking, so certain stereotypes are there, and that point we get. Are the stereotypes only in one case? I mean, I'm just again to continue to play devil's advocate out here. What happens if there's a case where a male, for example, a father says, I don't want to work as hard as I am doing. I would much rather spend a lot more time with my children. I'd rather see them growing up. I'd rather be at home a lot more and have a much easier life. Would that person also not be judged?
But society would expect him to take more of a proactive role in the market or in the workplace. See, the conventional institution of marriage was based on a principle of complementarity, was based on a principle of man being the breadwinner and women being the bread maker. That notion has changed. But we have to understand one thing.
Are you saying in some way that was a much simpler way and a better way to do things?
That was a very workable or practical way which used to be in the past. But I know as times have changed, we have evolved further. But nobody is disagreeing to the fact. But we have to understand one basic premise. The basic premise which John Locke said 300 years ago, that men are or women are born like this white paper and gender is simply a social construction. This is the base on which the left liberal argument has come to our forefront. But that paradigm has changed. The modern scientific community accepts the fact that male brain is different from the female brain. Male physiology is different from the female physiology. This is all the modern work done. So we should nuance our system into such a way that there is a principle of complementarity, and not even suggesting for a second that females should go back to their home, they should sit in their inner houses. No. But we should have an understanding. And remember, family is not about bargaining and burden. It is about coming together of two people, and we should not make it. And if I can include in one line, success is about balance. Balancing work and life.
Okay, I agree. Before I come to you, Vinita Bali, would you agree with that part of what he said, that whenever you're looking at success, you should also recognize the fact that men and women are different, which is not to say that they are not equal. They're equal but different.
They're unique.
And that needs to be kept in mind. Would you agree with that basic premise?
Of course they are different, but is that even important? I think what we're really talking about here is I believe we're getting a little bit derailed in this debate. The other question we need to ask ourselves is, which men and which women are we talking about? If you're talking about the corporate world or, people who are, in a higher socio-economic group, it's one thing. I don't know of any woman in a lower socio-economic group who does not work. So I think when we create a lot of these arguments, we tend to look at a particular stereotype. The fact is, as I've said at another forum, all women are working women, but I can show you a lot of men who are not working. But, again, I think the issue which Suhail mentioned is that do we acknowledge and respect? Do we respect the dignity of what men and women bring? Because we need both men and women if society is to progress. We need better understanding. We need greater empathy. We need greater compassion. And I would say, Vikram, that let's change the dialogue to what will make for a better society, a more understanding society, then get involved in, is so-and-so doing more work or is so-and-so doing less work?
Fair enough. But one minute. You're with the Sabarimala Trust, right? Are there some temples, I don't know if Sabarimala is there, there are some temples that refuse permission to women in India, right?
There are some temples which refuses permission to man too.
Correct.
See, this is playing the victim.
No. This is the point I'm making. Exactly.
Principle of complementarity.
The point I'm trying to make is there is gender discrimination for both genders, depending on where and who you are.
There is only gender differentiation, no discrimination.
Now, religion to my mind should be gender neutral,
not individuality.
Before Suhail starts blaming television anchors again, this is not necessarily one of the big fights about gender differentiation and gender inequality. We'll come to that later. We are specifically looking at what constitutes success. Ranjana, the definition of success for women, is it creating more of a problem? As he said, there was a time in the past when for women, and you could have said those are totally unequal and terrible times, when for women it was very clear what constituted them being successful. They had to be good in certain areas, limited areas, but certain areas. Now has it become far more difficult for them?
I think, you know, this whole idea of
you're expected to be good in your job, you're expected to be good when you're going back home, you're expected to be good in, as a good mother, you expect, there are lots of areas.
You know, this whole idea of complementarity, I mean, like, that's at the cost of women, clearly, because, you know, when you divide work, there are two types of work. There's a productive work and there is reproductive work. Productive work is paid work, you know, where you are able to earn by whatever you are doing, and reproductive work is unpaid work, which is from having bearing a child to looking after the family to looking after your social relations to everything. So to get, just can you please, you know, when I'm speaking, if you speak like this, first of all you made a very ahistorical and very wrong argument, and now you're trying to interfere when somebody is trying to put the record straight. So please keep quiet till I complete my argument. Okay, so I think the second thing is that when you're talking about success, then it puts triple burden on women. Now, what is this triple burden? Triple burden is when she is to compete in an environment which prefers masculine traits, which is a kind of company, factory, corporate, whatever you want to call it, it prefers.
Why?
Because there are, you know, issues where when you look at the how the women managers are, or how women are not missing from the board, how there are only 7-8% women managers when it looks, when you're looking at the public sector, when you're looking at the private sector, of course data is better, it's about 30%. But when you look at the women's performance being assessed.
So you're saying that so success in the corporate world is based on masculine.
Absolutely, you have to compete double and show your competence double to be able to prove yourself in the workplace. Secondly, at home, then you are judged as a good mother, good wife, good daughter-in-law, good whatever, everything. No man has to come back at home and worry about what is going to be. No, 90%. Well, let me
but I'm sort of disputing that. Why not? Because I can think.
Yeah, you can think of, but you are not doing it. That is the difference.
Correct.
You think that a lot of men are back home and they are able to provide for what will be cooked, what kind of food should be served, how the children must take tiffin to school, whether they have completed their homework or not, whether they are able to.
But aren't there lots of men who increasingly
compete in the games or not? So all that, and then second, let me complete my third burden part of it. Social responsibility, the parent-in-laws, the expectations, family relations, social relations. You maintain everything together.
Recently, I had a debate, a great feminist. She told me, Sharup, do you know, when my husband used to come home, first he used to tell in Hindi, chai piyogi, not said I want tea. And she is 65 years old and the man is 68 years old. Same thing today also. Today also, no, I am telling, today also, a lot of men, either when their wife is working, they are equally participating in the cooking, house cooking, everything, as well as or outsource. As I giving another data, as the success we are going.
We can go on reeling this data.
We are going the outsourcing of the food, outsourcing of the food.
Where we have 240.
Your timing
240 women managers. He can reel out whatever
he is simply playing victim.
3 hours.
No, so it's not like the man is cooking now. If the woman is
and woman both are taking around 3.5 hours, total 6.5 hours. This is the data of the statistics. Search in internet. Now, second thing about the men working hours 11 hours, women working hours 7 hours. Why it is family does not mean only wife. Family means mother, sister, brother, grandfather. Family does not mean grandmother.
Okay, Amish Tripathi.
Only husband and wife. Husband and wife does not make a family, and this is the pay we are paying. As I say, another thing. Today you break the family. You came to nuclear family. So your job is increasing.
I think
You have to do it, or you have to outsource it.
This
Or
is
you
a
have to
serious
outsource it.
debate.
Can I,
We have
Amish,
Soviet
about?
in the studio.
Amish,
It's a serious debate.
What's
What
up?
is he talking
Okay.
about?
You are saying what? I don't
No,
know
but
what
it is
problem you have with the men. Men are doing the everything. Men are doing tea.
Ranjana.
My father is making tea every day. I
Ranjana.
make my food my own.
Ranjana, what problem do you have with
What is
men?
the problem with the men?
Why
Why
do you
you
have
do
problem
not
with men?
recognize
Ranjana?
of the men cooking?
That is
So-
reverse
Now, can
female
Ranjana tell you
shouting.
what problem she has with you? I mean, with men in general.
Okay, the society.
Why don't you all do this
listen
privately?
to me.
Let's
Then
have a
please listen to me. Then I think the way the society has structured gender relations, it does not really work in favor of women. So women get subjugated, exploited, and oppressed in this system. That
Fine,
is the
fine,
problem.
fine,
It's
fine.
not problem
You
by
don't
with
doesn't
men
agree.
or
Okay, now,
with
now,
women.
Amish.
It's the way our society and system
I'm
is
trying to, okay, let me
structured.
come back. Amish, the basic point Ranjana was making is that the reason it's tougher for women is because they have to be successful in a number of areas. They have to compete in the boardroom, then they have to be, good with the family, then social responsibilities, blah and blah. Is that something, do you agree with that? Or do you think those are the same sort of pressures in the modern day even men have?
Look, as far as success in corporate life is concerned, I would perhaps disagree a little bit with Mrs. Ranjana. I wouldn't say that success in the modern corporate world is dependent on you having so-called masculine qualities. In fact, so-called feminine qualities like EQ are increasingly becoming more important in the modern corporate world. I think a big reason why you don't find a large number of women in senior management is what happens during the late 20s and the early 30s. That's when that's really when you're making your transition to senior middle management, senior management, and that's when now this is obviously a middle class, upper middle class scenario, and that's also when women end up having children and they are forced to make a choice. There's a large cohort of very talented, highly qualified women who are doing very good work at home because they're bringing up their children, but their talent is not being
make that choice,
utilized.
No? Because they don't have
yes,
children.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that, and
So-
this
so
is
it's
the
only
core
women
problem.
should-
It's not
should
about
make a
it's
choice
not
because
about
they have children.
masculine
This is where
qualities.
the problem
It's
is.
not a, no, if I
This
may
is
just
where the
complete my point,
problem
Ms.
is.
Ranjana.
Does not have
If I may
Even
just
does
complete my
not need
point.
maternity leave.
What
So-
happens? Okay.
We do
All right, and let Amish
What
finish
happens
he's
is
saying.
if the corporate world
Let
can
Amish finish
actually
what he's saying,
create
please.
daycare centers, if the corporate world can actually create daycare centers, because the family support system that was there for women perhaps 10-15 years ago, where many grandparents would take care of children, that has actually died out. If the corporate world can actually create daycare centers which will allow these very, very talented women to come back into the workforce, you'll find many more women actually rising to senior management, and the corporates will also benefit. I won't call it just social responsibility. It's actually in their profit motive, because you have so many talented women.
Can I just
who are
throw
not
that
being
question
used,
both to
who are
Amira
not working
Sonia
in the
and
corporate
to
world.
Vinita Bali? Vinita Bali, you first. And I think Amish has touched on a crucial issue. A lot of the other stuff is yeah, it's slightly generic. It could differ from family to family, but it is a genuine problem that at a certain time, and the most crucial, I think Indra Nooyi was also talking about this and a lot of what she's been saying recently, at crucial moments of a woman's career, that's a time when she could be having a child at that time. There could be very crucial teenage years, and those are the times when work pressures are at the most. And that's a sort of a challenge that a woman often faces, which, as Ranjana said, sometimes a man doesn't face to quite that same extent. Do you agree with that, and what can be done to sort out that issue?
Vikram, in my view, we really tend to exaggerate these work pressures and so on and so forth. Of course, there is pressure. Of course, there is, you've got to perform, you've got to deliver, you've got to produce the results that you have to produce. But it's not such a big deal. Of course, women, in their late 20s, early 30s go off to have children. But look at it in the larger context. In a 30 or 40 year career span, even if you take 2 months, two times 6 months of leave to go and have a child, and you take more time than that, it's not such a big deal. So I do believe that sometimes we keep reinforcing arguments and then they become larger than reality. I think the issue really is that women have greater choices than men do. In other words, that You know, if women choose not to work, they can decide not to work. And I think we also have to change our definition of success. Success is not what you do in the corporate world, but success is what you do as an individual, as a human being, your contribution to society, which could be outside of the corporate world as well. I think the second thing is that you know, we're talking about equity between men and women and not equality. Of course, if, you know, children are to be produced, the women have to go away. But let's not diminish their contribution over a career that spans 35 to 36 to 40 years, even in the corporate world. So my sincere request would be that let's talk about what are the dimensions that are going to change these heated debates and arguments that we have, which actually lead to nowhere, because, you know, everybody is firmly entrenched in their points of view, to say, how do we create a society which is going to be more inclusive? How do we create a society which is going to be more understanding and more empathetic of the different needs of men and women?
Fair enough. Amira Sonia, let me get you in on that. The point about childbearing and the fact that it has to be the woman who goes away at that point. Vinita Bali says, don't make too big a deal about it. It's actually only maybe a few months or a couple of years in a 30, 40-year working career.
Well, actually, I have to say I don't agree with Vinita. In my experience, and I'm looking back over 30 years, I found that many, many talented women make certain choices at certain points of their life. One is at the time they get married. Often their husband moves to another place and the woman chooses to move with him. When you have a child, the woman, of course, sometimes takes off 3 months as maternity leave. But many make the choice to stay at home and look after the child until a certain age. And certainly, you know, later in life, when a parent is ill, when something has happened, a crisis at home, it's usually the woman who makes the choice, quite voluntarily. I'm not saying that she's always pressurized to do it, but women do tend to make the choice to be at home. And I think the point that was made by Amish is a very, very valid one. Today we have technology which makes it possible for many careers to be, you know, possible in your own time and space. You can work from home, you can work flexible hours. And I think certainly for women who are in the corporate space, companies should take the effort and time to make these possibilities available until the woman can return to formal full-time work in the workspace.
All right.
But I think we also need to consider what happens to women who are not in the corporate space. We all have women who are working in our homes. They have exactly the same kind of problems. And I think once again we need to look at a wider solution to deal with these issues, because these are choices that women do make no matter which socio-economic strata they come from.